Where do I even begin? So what's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here. Obviously, took a little bit of a break. I had some stuff going on, so I wasn't able to record anything. And I've missed a lot in that time period, clearly. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Go a little bit game by game. So first of all, get to the Everton match and all of the missed opportunities that Leeds, Dortmund, and Leicester had. They didn't put away their chances, and we managed to get the wins because of it. Everton put away the chances that we gave them, the very easy chances we gave them, and they get a draw out of it. So disappointing to not beat them after how we controlled the match, after how we put away those chances. Very disappointing in that sense. Go into the international break, come back, and it's almost like Potter said, you know what, guys? I feel like I've made some decisions that were good, that were solid. I need to go back to what I know, which is shit. Puts Havertz back up top. Cucurella is back in the team. And yeah, Aston Villa embarrass us at home. So he gets sacked because of it. Now, here's the thing. Going into the next match, not really sure what to expect from Bowley. Do you have an idea in mind? Is that why you got rid of him now? Because there were a lot of matches. Because Villa, they're not bad. They have been pretty solid this season. So losing to them is not as bad as losing to Southampton at home. That's losing to Southampton for me is a much more sackable offense. But despite that, he still kept Potter in charge for a little bit. So either this match, there was something about it that Bowley really didn't like. And he's like, you know what? This is a sign to me that we're not going in the right direction. Or he sacked him because, okay, I finally have a guy in mind. I know who I want to bring in. But that wasn't the case. Because clearly we've seen now he's going to wait till next season to bring somebody in. So if you're going to do that, then why wait? But anyways, I'll get back to all of that in a second. Because going into the Liverpool match, Salter, the assistant coach, takes charge and basically plays a Potter match. Havertz is up top. We dominate the match. We dominate possession. We can't finish, and it ends 0-0. Typical Potter match from his time at Chelsea. So then in steps Lampard, and I'll talk about that decision in a minute. But going into his first match, not feeling too confident, because honestly, I just remember what it was like under Lampard before. He started well, but then dropped off, and then Everton, it felt like he kind of continued his drop off from Chelsea, and now it feels like he's continuing his drop off from Everton. So it feels like his career path is in a downward trajectory at the moment. But yeah, first game against Wolves, not a good match. Wolves didn't necessarily outplay us, we just looked awful. And Wolves took their one chance that Cucurella and Kepa gave them, and that's all it took. And then going into the next match, obviously it's going to be a really difficult one against Real, and played well for the first 15-20 minutes. And then Real said, oh, right, we're a quality team, and they're not right now, so let's actually do that. And basically controlled the rest of the match, scored 2 goals, pretty simple ones, to be fair. So yeah, not too unexpected, especially at Real Madrid. You're not expecting to get much of a result there. But disappointing, because it felt like we had a chance to maybe put a goal in or maybe hold on and come back to Stamford Bridge with a bit of energy. But yeah, you give away 2 easy goals, and then Cucurella helps Chilwell get sent off by his lack of tracking, because for some reason Lampard said, hey, I know I've got Chalobah on the bench, but I've also got Cucurella. And I would much rather put in a guy who's not a good defender over a guy who has shown, obviously he's not been good recently, but he's shown he can be a good defender. That's some dumb thinking right there. But then going into the Brighton match, thinking, all right, well, we looked pretty good against Real at times, so maybe things are on the rise, and then Brighton absolutely dominate us. From the kickoff, we were on the back foot. We were absolutely just unable to handle it. We got lucky with one deflected goal, and Brighton continued to miss their chances, looking like a Potter's Chelsea, honestly. And then eventually the pressure told, and they got their 2 goals pretty simply, and it was Brighton's match. And we were at Stamford Bridge, and it was still Brighton's match. Like, they were in control. They dominated us. And that's embarrassing. Because obviously Real Madrid playing better than us, not too surprising. They are one of the best teams in the world right now. But we still held our own for at least 20 minutes of that match. And then to go against Brighton at our place and not be able to even hardly put a shot on target for most of the match. How can that be okay? And then to make it even weirder, Real Madrid comes to our place and we dominate the match again. At least for the first half. I didn't watch second half because once I saw the goal go in, I'm just like, well, that's basically it. Because, yeah, we created so many chances. We had so many moments. You know, Conte missed some easy chances. Cucurella basically just said, goalkeeper. I'm going to aim there. I mean, just basically wasted all of these chances that we could have easily put away, could have made Real Madrid sweat a little bit. I don't think we necessarily would have kept that control because Real Madrid, again, they just have more quality. So they probably would have turned it around even if we did put away a couple of those chances. But the fact that we didn't, and then we give away two, which I only saw the first goal, and it was just god-awful defending. It just, I don't get it. You know, I don't really get why Lampard. Because we've looked worse since he's come in. And that's kind of where I want to keep a lot of the focus of this video. It's trying to figure out Bowley and what Bowley is trying to do here. Because on the one hand, the conspiracy, the out there thinking, the side of my brain that's just like, let's think crazy for a minute, guys. That side of my brain is like, you think Bowley's actually like a Man U or an Arsenal or a Tottenham fan? Like, is that what's going on here? And he was just like, yeah, totally. I would love to take over this club. I would love to help you guys, you know, keep on being a great club. Yeah, totally. And he's just come in and he's like, I'm spending all this money, guys. See, we got all these great players. But he knows deep down that he's like just sort of ripping the club apart by not really having any sort of focused plan. And he's just like, yeah, this is totally gonna work, guys. Don't worry, I'm throwing all this money out there. We'll see results soon. Like, that's the crazy side of my brain, because I, honestly, especially knowing he owns a baseball team, you know, I hate to say it, but the stereotype of the dumb American who doesn't understand football, it does hold for a lot of people. I think that is honestly, that's what's probably going on. In my mind, I see him as a manager, or not a manager, an owner who's come in with an idea of how a club should be run, but he's only ever owned a baseball club. And baseball, football, two completely different entities. Even most American sports, very different from football. You know, how you're supposed to run a club, how you're supposed to do business, how you're supposed to bring in players to be successful, very different when you're talking football as compared to baseball, American football, basketball. Because that's the thing. I mean, he owns the Dodgers, so clearly they're successful. But in baseball, you look at this guy's stats, you look at what position he plays, that's all you need to know. You know, when you're bringing in a coach, you don't really have to look that hard, because I feel like coaching baseball is not too much to it. You just pick the lineup, you pick your pitcher for the night, and that's it. And you have to have a little bit of an understanding of baseball to know who's the best one to pick on what nights compared to who you're facing. But overall, managing a baseball team, very different from managing a football team. And I feel like I don't know how all of it's run right now. Like, I'm not in the back rooms. I don't know who's making the decisions. I don't know who's making the final calls. But you look at how some of these other clubs, some of the clubs that are being successful at the moment, you look at how they're running things, and it feels like there's a system in place. You know, you do have your owners that are in charge of everything. They make the overall decision, but you feel like they make a decision, and that basically leads to this guy who's making another decision, and leads to this guy who makes the final decision. And it feels like there's a certain connection there. With Chelsea right now, it feels like Bowley's just like, I'm in charge, guys. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go get this guy. I'm going to go get this guy. I'm going to go get this guy. And I'm going to get this manager. And we're going to be successful. That's not how it works. That is not at all how it works. You look at Liverpool before this season, they knew they wanted Klopp. They brought him in, and they brought in players that he wanted. Now, their problem has been that they haven't really freshened up the team because, like, oh, we're still being successful. These guys are still top of their game right now. We don't need to change much. And unfortunately, that's led to some complacency. And, well, unfortunately for them, I'm loving watching them fail because they have just players I don't really like. But clearly, there's been some complacency. They've not really done enough to keep the squad feeling energized and fresh. This season they did bring in a couple more up top, but it didn't really feel like they replaced Mane, who was kind of the heartbeat of the front three. And then, of course, you got your defenders who Van Dijk was just kind of bullying the league because he was physically capable of doing it, and now he's not. And Alexander-Arnold, players didn't really take him on, and they sort of realized now in the past couple of years, oh, wait, he's an awful defender. And so they started actually attacking that side more often, and clearly teams have found a way to be successful against Liverpool. With Man City, that's a team that they brought Pep in, they knew they wanted Pep, and then they basically went and got a team that he wanted. And Haaland is the only one that kind of is a little different at the moment, and again, there's been talks about, does he make them worse, does he make them better? Clearly, Haaland at least is showing he is a good player. But I don't necessarily think he fits into Pep's system, which is why, even though they've still been successful this season, they've not been as successful. Because I think a lot of people just expected them to run away with the league, and clearly they have not. They've dropped off a few points because overall the team doesn't quite feel the same as what Pep is used to seeing and what we're used to seeing from him. So I'm sure he's still going to tinker. He's going to find a way to make that work. But again, with City, clearly there was a plan. We're going to bring him in. We're going to trust him. We're going to bring in players he wants. With Arteta at Arsenal, it felt very much like the club after Wenger left, after they had that consistency gone. They struggled to find a truly new foundation, but I think eventually they did sort of like, all right, well, we brought in a couple of these guys. They did okay. They kept us competitive, at least, but we're still not seeing the results we want. And then Arteta comes in after working under Pep for a while, and it's very clear they wanted to give him a chance to build this team. And they had a solid foundation to do so because, again, they weren't necessarily struggling. They just weren't being as successful as they wanted. So they were like, let's give him a chance to do what he needs to do to get this team up back into the top four where we want to be. And now they're seeing the results of that. With Man U, we saw, when Ranić came in, clearly he was brought in for a year. They knew that he was just going to be there for a year. They knew who they wanted to get. His job was more so just, hey, let's figure out some of the backroom stuff. Let's figure out some of the contract stuff, some of these players that maybe need to be moved on. That was his job. And now Ten Hag has come in, and while they still, I think, are a little back and forth on I guess they still have some attitude problems, in my opinion, that are not really helping them at the moment, but they got their big one, Ronaldo, out of there, and they have been more successful because of it, because they've trusted the manager to do what he does. So all of these clubs that have been or are successful at the moment, there was a plan, they trusted the manager, they let the manager do what he needed to do. With Chelsea, we had just a major restructuring happening. With Abramovich leaving, the consistency he brought this club, it was going to be a turnaround period. It was going to be a period of change. We're going to have probably a couple of years of growing pains, but we were going to figure it out. But Bowley came in, and it's almost like he just assumed, oh, no, I got this, guys. We're going to set up for the long haul right now. You don't have a foundation in place yet, though. You don't have that consistency. You've not been here at the club that long, and you're already basically saying, yeah, guys, we already have something in place. This foundation is built. We're ready to build this club up from the bottom. No, you're not. You haven't built the foundation yet. And honestly, that's why Potter was a poor decision. Because we weren't ready to look at the long term yet. We needed a manager to come in and fix some of the cracks that have been basically built in there from Tuchel's time. Not that Tuchel was god awful, because clearly we're seeing he wasn't that bad. It could have been worse under him. But there were some issues that he had that I personally, still have an issue with because it hasn't really changed since he left. But the cracks were there. We needed a manager to come in and fix those cracks. Instead, we brought in a manager who essentially went and opened up the cracks a little bit more and said, no, I think these are fine. I think the place needs some of these cracks in there to give it some life and energy. Whatever. Like, there wasn't enough in place to say, let's start looking at the future. Let's start looking long term. Let's start, give this manager a few years to try to do something. You weren't prepared for that. You weren't set up to do that effectively. And so now here we are, less than a year later since your whole long-term project began, and we're wallowing in the bottom half of the table. We can barely get a win. You're on your third manager this season, fourth if you count the assistant manager taking over for a game. And we can barely score, let alone win. So the long-term project failed because you were not set up. And that's where, I'm hearing all these reports about, they're going to go get Nagelsmann. Why? Well, because he's a young, exciting man. Stop looking young. Even players-wise. You're bringing in all of this young talent who, in a few years they might be world beaters. But right now, they're not the finished product. We need finished products here. We need more Silvas on the field. We need more Contes on the field. Because I see a bunch of young players with no sense of how to work together because you just picked and chose from all these different leagues, all these top players, without a sense of how are they going to fit together in a system. And there's no formation that fits everybody in. There's no tactic style that fits everybody in. We have a little bit of everything all around the board, and it's made us so unsuccessful because of it. So Boehly either needs to take a step back and go, you know what? I tried my way. My way is clearly not working. So I'm going to bring in a very talented, experienced manager, and we're going to trust him to help us get back on track before we start looking to build really a solid, long-term, multi-year plan. Or he needs to just step out of the club. Because clearly it's got to be one or the other. Either he's got to give or the club is going to give. And we're going to see ourselves in the championship in the next couple of years. Because his way is not working. What it's doing is creating this culture of a bunch of players with no self-confidence, a ton of doubt, and it shows on the field. It shows in the manager. Both Potter, Lampard, neither of them are god-awful managers, but they certainly look it right now because they cannot get this team working together. I honestly, to be fair, I look at the players that we have here, I struggle to see what manager would come in necessarily and go, yeah, I can make this work. Now, given a transfer window where we could get rid of some of these players that don't fit a certain system and try to get in more players that do fit a certain system, maybe then. But if you're going to stick with this whole Boehly's just going to bring in this top talent without a sense of what type of player they are, what system they fit into, where on the field they play, if you're just going to keep doing that in charge and the manager just, hey, you go take all these great pieces that I brought that are from different puzzles and try to fit them into one puzzle, as long as you continue to do that, we're still going to struggle. Because you could try, with Havertz, yeah, sure, he's scored some goals. You would think he might be a good striker because the way he plays, he tends to get into the striker position. But the fact of the matter is, if he doesn't have somebody in front of him making runs, he's not going to be effective. Because where he ends his runs are typically where now he's starting them. And so he's just sort of standing there. And they keep trying that square peg in the round hole. It's not going to work. But it's like Boehly almost expects the manager, hey, make this work. Take this player who doesn't fit this position, who doesn't fit this style, make them do it. Make them fit the style. That's easier said than done. Some players are not capable of that. Some players have difficulty making that adjustment, changing their way of playing. So, yeah, right now I feel like Bowley has either got to wake up and realize the way he's doing it, the way he's running this club is running it into the ground, which again, maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he's secretly closet Arsenal fan and he's loving ruining this club. But if he really, businessman, wants to make this club work from a financial and from a successful point of view, he wants to have a club, he wants to own a club that is a successful football club. If that is what he wants, then he's got to realize the way he's running it right now is not helping us. It doesn't help the manager, it doesn't help the players, it's not going to help the results on the field, because ultimately you have basically set this club up to be this makeshift all around, like we have all of these different pieces that don't fit together. And again, it doesn't matter who you bring in. It doesn't matter what manager you bring in. They're not going to be able to make these players that don't fit in the same system fit into one system. It's not going to happen. So, yeah, that's kind of my overall feelings about Bowley and the club right now. Kind of go through some of the players real quick, because obviously there's a lot of talk about who they need to get rid of, cleaning house, all of this stuff. So, first and foremost, I think the two that you can't get rid of because they really are doing no wrong at the moment is Silva and Conte. Obviously, Conte with his injuries is still a problem, and it's something that hopefully, getting a better medical staff, because I think they've made some changes there. Because I know I was talking about that earlier this season, where the medical staff, it felt like, just was not doing a good job of keeping long-term injuries from popping back up. So we do need to get him healthy again, like fully healthy. But as long as Silva and Conte are available, and as long as Silva doesn't drop off soon, because you would think, being 38, almost 39 now, you would think eventually the drop-off would happen, but it's still not. He's still playing fantastically. So as long as those two are still top of their game, I would say those are the two that I'm sitting here going, don't ever get rid of them. Until they retire, do not get rid of them, because they are two world-class quality players. Outside of that, most of the players are kind of, if we find a manager that can make them work in a system, Havertz, for example, I think he can be a great player. But we need a manager who realizes he's best when he's playing attacking mid and behind a striker, and a striker in front of him who's making runs that opens up the space for him to run into. That's where he's best. So if we have a manager who's just going to keep trying him as striker, like Potter, like Tuchel, like Lampard have done, and it hasn't worked, then yeah, obviously he's going to continue to be ineffective, and he's going to look worthless, and there are going to be a lot of people that want him out of the club. But I personally think he can be effective, and there are quite a few players at the club right now who are like that. The ones that are on my I think they need to be gone list, obviously, I've bashed them enough, and I think everybody knows my opinion, especially if, for some reason, if you have seen me on social media, if you're in like the Atlanta Chelsea like group pages or whatever, Cucurella for me he's the worst defensive signing that we've made since Djilabadji. He's been absolutely worthless. He works hard, don't get me wrong. Like he definitely works hard, he busts his butt, but my God, he has the quality of a U10 player. It's, my God, he's awful. He's absolutely terrible, and an awful signing. Not even just because he's a terrible player, but we spent $50 million on him, I think. Like, that has got to be one of the worst signings in Premier League history. Like, signing him in general is a bad decision. Signing him for anything above $5 million? Stupid. And we signed him for 50. So, yeah, he's got to be gone. Because he's done nothing but hurt us since day one. He's not helped us in any way. Even in the games where looked okay, it's not because he did anything super effective. It's just because he didn't make any huge mistakes. So if that's the best you got, I don't want you at the club. So Cucurella needs to be gone. I feel like we need to switch up in our keeper system, because Kepa at the moment's really, he's gone back to kind of the Kepa that I've come to expect. letting in some easy chances. Even his passing at the moment, I think he's connected maybe 5 passes in the last 3 games. So many just kicked out of bounds, so many that were misplaced passes that were giveaways. So the one thing that he used to be fantastic with, the reason Sarri brought him in to begin with, oh well, he's good with his feet. Not anymore. And Mendy, if he's not taking Kepa's spot, then clearly he's not showing enough in training to get that spot back. So both of them, I'm kind of thinking might need to be pushed on, and we need to go get somebody who's going to be world class, keep us in games type of keeper. In the defense, we've got a lot of young talent. We got a lot of players that look okay. Koulibaly's doing. He's not great, but he's definitely not as bad as he started. I think he's come along and he's done okay recently. Chalobah's kind of hit and miss. He needs some more consistency, in my opinion, because when he was playing consistently under Tuchel, those were his best games. And then Tuchel benched him for a while, and then he came back and he wasn't as strong. So I feel like if he just gets a consistent run of games, he will come good in the end. But at the moment, he just doesn't look quality enough. And I think a lot of that is down to he's playing like one game every 3 months. Fofana looks like he's starting to step up a bit, so that's good to see. And then past that, I know we got some younger players out on loan and stuff. So we'll see, like the likes of Colwill. We'll see if he comes back and looks effective. But I think at the moment our defense is fine. Again, as long as you keep Silva, let him be sort of the leader back there. I think we're doing okay defensively. Maybe need a little bit more intensity back there at times, but for the most part, I feel like they've done okay. They've not been, in my opinion, outside of Cucurella, they've not been the reason for, we're just giving away goals. We've not been doing that a lot. A lot of it is just down to we essentially don't finish any of our chances, and then there's just one fantastic play or one shot that Kepa kind of lets into easily, or again Cucurella makes a mistake and gives a goal. That's kind of where we've been hit the most as far as giving away chances. As far as the wing backs or fullbacks are concerned, we do need improvement there. Chilwell looked okay for a little bit, but more recently in the past few games, I feel like he's kind of dropped off. And I feel like wing back is the position he needs to be. He doesn't need to be fullback because he needs more space out wide to basically make things happen. James, he's just dropped off entirely. Honestly, it's gotten to the point where every time he's out there, I'm a little frustrated. And not that we have anybody beyond him, but yeah, he looks a player that's just completely... He's a stroller, basically. On both of the James siblings are, to be fair. Like, they are both players at the moment, and Reece James not always like this. He at one point he was looking one of the best right backs in the world because he was so effective getting up and down the line. He was working his butt off. He was getting in great crosses. Now, kind of strolls up and down the line. His crosses have been terrible. His passing is negative. Like, he's dropped off, and he looks a shadow of the player he used to be. And Lauren James is, my God, all the talent in the world. She could probably run through everybody in the WSL, but jeez Louise, she's such a lazy player. I get so frustrated watching her. But anyways, not talking about the women's right now. In the midfield, we need more defensive solidity in there because Fernandez looking pretty solid on, passing. Again, better distributor than Jorginho in my opinion because he actually looks forward instead of always looking backwards. Conte is coming back, so that's good. Kovacic still looks okay, good keeping possession in there. But we don't really have anybody that's sort of the defensive, beast. Conte can be, but it feels like he's more so getting forward these days. So I don't know if that's changed, for him or from a manager point of view. But honestly, I would say if you have Fernandez and Conte in there, that's your 2. But it feels like everybody wants to do a 3 with Fernandez sitting deep distributing, Conte and Kovacic or Gallagher getting up and down. And I just don't think that's as effective, especially for Conte. He needs to be sitting a bit deeper and just breaking up everything. And then Fernandez can sit deeper as well, win the ball, and then find a great pass that unlocks us. So that's where I think we need to be headed is a 2 midfield and find another backup defensive option past Conte because obviously we don't have that at the moment. But, the likes of Loftus-Cheek, honestly, Gallagher, he's working hard, and I appreciate his hard work, but yeah, the quality from him has not been good enough. Mount as well. I mean, he's not even hardly featured recently, so um, I feel like there are a lot of those young English talents right now. James Mount, Loftus-Cheek, Gallagher, Hudson-Odoi. A lot of those guys, it feels like, have just not lived up to their potential. And unfortunately, that happens a lot for young English talent. It feels like they get all this praise and hype from the media, and that's expected because, English media wants to hype up English players. But it feels like they just let it all go to their head and eventually drop off in the end. But as far as the attacking people are concerned, I mean, we have a lot of players up there, a lot of different types of players as well. Some of them, the likes of Mudryk, he's the type of guy he'll get in behind you. Sterling likes to hang out wide and kind of cut to the byline and try to drive in. Ziyech wants to be on the byline and come out, basically cut it back and then cross in, a little in-swinger toward the back post. Pulisic is just kind of a runner up there. Havertz, again, more of an attacking mid. Felix is just kind of an all-over-the-place type of player who causes some chaos and very skilled on the ball. He wants to be on the ball making things happen. So it's just bunch of different players that don't really fit together in one system, again, like I said before. So we need to figure out, what are we trying to do with our attack. Do we want wingers or do we want more inside forwards? Because if we want inside forwards, the likes of Pulisic, the likes of Felix, I would say maybe Mudryk if he can change his style a little bit. Those types of players are fine. Sterling and Ziyech don't fit as inside forwards. They need to be out wide. That is where they are best because they have time and space to make things happen. But if we want wingers, well, then now we don't need our wing backs anymore because our wingers are going to be taking up the wide areas. The wing backs will be just crowding that area even more. So, I don't know. We have to find some sort of solution. Again, Bowley needs to get a manager in that he trusts to basically make all these decisions and say, what players do you want? What formation are you running? What tactics and style are you using? And just bring in players that fit that instead of just, oh, this guy's stats are pretty good, let's bring him in. And, oh, this guy's young and highly rated, let's bring him in. That needs to stop because ultimately we're not going to get anything done as long as that continues. So I see my time is almost up on my recording here. So, yeah. I mean, like I said, we're in free fall at the moment. I worry for the club because Bowley, it feels like, isn't really learning from his mistakes. So we'll see. Next season will really be telling, depending on who he goes and gets, depending on the players he brings in. Is he going to realize that he's not the be-all, know-all in charge? Or is he going to continue to be like, no, I know what I'm doing here. Don't worry, guys. I've got a plan, and continue to screw us over until we get relegated. We'll see. But right now, I'm probably not going to be doing game-by-game reviews. Probably more so just going to be doing more of these little plastic podcasts, as I like to call them, because, yeah, it's just, I'm not really enjoying the games at the moment. I'm not really watching them enough to truly review them because I'm kind of half watching, because they are so frustrating, and I don't want to make myself too mad right now. But that's about it for me. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these past run of games that I have not reviewed? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Chelsea talks, and I will see you guys whenever I see you. Peace out.